Hi everybody, I'm Sarah, the Real Simple Mama, and we're doing something a little different today. We're going to talk about how to measure items before and after cooking if you are counting macros. And you can see my introduction video as far as macros from the mind of just a normal person of average intelligence here on my YouTube channel, just so you can get an introduction and a basic idea of what it means to track macros, why we do it that way, as opposed to just counting calories, things like that. But what I'm going to show you today is the confusion on how to measure things before you cook them and then after you cook them, and sort of why we have to do that. So if you're getting something and the form in which you buy it is also the form in which you eat it, then life is simple. You can measure or weigh things like berries if you're going to eat them raw. You bought them raw at the store like this, right? And then you're going to eat them in this same state. You're not freezing them, you're not cooking them, you're not blending them or anything like that. So that's a straightforward thing. The problem is that if you buy something like raw pasta at the store, the way their nutrition label is set up is for raw pasta and measuring the raw pasta. And things like pasta and meat change their size and change their weight when you cook them. So the problem is, if you're measuring just raw pasta and then you cook it and you eat it, what you tracked is not really what you ate, if that makes sense. So what ends up happening is, and it's kind of a pain, but I promise this video is going to be way longer than the time it takes you to do it. Essentially what you have to do is you have to weigh something in the original state in which you bought it, because that's what this is based on, okay? This is 2 ounces of raw pasta, for example. Okay, when you buy meat, any kind of meat, whether it's poultry or beef or lamb or fish or anything, it's the same state. Okay, it's the same situation. So essentially what we're having to do is measure it in this state, then cook it, and then weigh it again. But I'm going to show you, and I have a dry erase board on how I do it. If you've got a smartphone, it also helps because you can ask who, you can ask Siri or Alexa or whatever to help you with the calculations, but I'm going to show you how we do it. So when you're doing something like pasta, what you're going to do is, I already know this is about half a box, is this in here, the pasta itself outside the box is 204 grams raw. Okay, now I'm not going to eat it raw, so I shouldn't be trying to find 56 grams of the raw pasta, and that's going to be equal to this many calories and this much fat and blah, 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 blah. Okay. So this nutrition label, let me turn it for you. This nutrition label is based on the 2 ounces, the weighed raw pasta, but you're not going to eat it raw. So the problem is you need to measure it so you know how much you're cooking, right? How much it was before. Now we're going to cook it. Then we're going to come back and weigh it again and see the difference. And essentially what you're going to end up doing is doing ratios. So this is going to be the 204. We're going to cook it and weigh it again, and it's going to be a little bit over double, I bet. And then we'll figure out what that percentage is. Then when I go to track how much I'm going to eat, I'm going to convert the ratios back. Does that make sense? So this time we're going forward, and then when you're going to track it into MyFitnessPal or Macros Plus or whatever app you use, you're just going to keep using that same ratio. Before I go and cook the pasta, a couple of tips really quick. Any app is going to be good to help you. I'm in the Macros Inc. group on Facebook. That's thousands of members, including trainers and coaches that will help you. They have their own app as well. For right now, I'm just using MyFitnessPal because it's what's quick and convenient and familiar to me. But make sure that you've got an app. You want to make sure that you weigh in grams if you can. So get yourself a good food scale, okay? One that can weigh in something more specific than ounces. Grams is best. Okay, for anything that's solid, or obviously if it's water, then you're going to use just volume, right? Like ounces or cups. But just measuring a food in weight of ounces isn't nearly as specific as grams. So you want grams, and you want a good reliable food scale that's on a flat surface. Okay. The other thing I'll tell you is having something like a dry erase board or taking notes on your phone, putting Post-its on your cabinet, something like that will help you in the beginning, and it won't take you that long, I promise. And the last thing is, every time I cook this exact same brand of pasta, I could assume that the ratio will be the same, right? To be quick. I know when I cook boneless, skinless chicken breast, for example, the ratio is about 80%, which basically means going from raw to cooked, it shrinks by 20%. Right? So if I track, I'm eating 5 ounces of chicken, I really meant I'm eating 5 ounces of raw chicken, which is, I'm only actually measuring out 4 ounces of cooked because it's a ratio of 80%. And I'll do a meat example in this video as well. But just for consistency's sake, the ratio for meat, for example, is usually around 70 to 80%, depending on what it is, which means it's shrinking by a percentage. And then pasta goes the opposite way, right? Pasta is going to get heavier and bulkier because it's absorbing the water. So we're going to measure this now. This exact portion of pasta that I know the pasta itself is 204 grams right now of pasta. Again, not including the box. Then we're going to boil it, not on that, don't worry. We're going to boil it and cook it. We're going to drain it. And then we're going to measure it again to see how much the 204 grams of raw pasta is when it's cooked. And then that will give us our ratio. Okay, we're back. This is the same amount of pasta that has now been cooked. And the weight of it, again, not including the bowl, so I zeroed it out with the bowl on there so I know it's not the bowl, is 413 grams. So as I skillfully take the lid off my pen here. So now we're at 413 grams. Now this is why this is important. Look at how much difference there is, right? So then what you're going to do is to figure out what the ratio is. And this is the number that we're going to be using for all further calculations of your serving size, right? And this will make more sense here in a second. If you're still confused, stay with me. We're always going to use what percentage of the first number is the second number. That's the easiest way to do it. Now you can do a ratio with like this percentage of a fraction equals this much of a fraction and cross multiply and all that stuff. But the easiest thing to do is to ask Siri, Alexa, whoever, what percentage, in this case, we're gonna say, what percentage of 204 is 413?
The answer is about 202.4509%.
Okay, so this is our ratio. So we're gonna round it and we'll say 202.5, okay? So let's come over here, and this is why this is important. 202.5. All right, so for example, let me see if I can pull up MyFitnessPal on my other device and show you what I'm talking about here. Because if I was to track, for example, tonight, I'm going to eat 3 ounces of pasta, and you put that in, because the nutrition information that your app has is based on this label, and the label is based on its original state, the state in which you bought it, which is raw. MyFitnessPal is assuming, okay, well, this is the nutrition information for Sarah, crunching down on 3 ounces of raw pasta, which number one is gross. And then in this case, look, that's a lot less food than what I'm really going to get. Okay, so if we go into my food diary, let's see if it's updated. So here's the protein pasta. Here's all of the nutrient information, right? So I tracked 3 ounces. This is where you need this ratio number, because I'm not going to eat 3 ounces of raw. I'm not going to eat 3 ounces of the form in which I bought it, right? Another example, and I'm going to do the food one tomorrow for lunch, and I pre-track stuff one day in advance. Tomorrow I'm going to eat 6 ounces of grilled chicken. Well, that sounds like, holy geez, lady, you're eating a lot of chicken, but it's not really going to be 6 ounces, because when the chicken gets cooked, it shrinks, right? Meat always shrinks when you cook it. Bacon is like the best example. You put those huge pieces of bacon out on the pan, and then by the time you've cooked them, they're like shriveled up into nothing, right? So when I measure my chicken tomorrow, I'm not really going to be eating 6 ounces of cooked chicken. That number and all of this data is for 6 ounces of raw chicken because I bought it raw. Okay, I tracked 3 ounces, right? Okay, and again, these are all the stats for 3 ounces. In the instance of this, now what we're going to do is for me to figure out how much am I actually getting to eat, right? Like I've cooked my food, I did all of this homework, right? All of this math. Now I'm ready to actually get my plate ready to eat. What do I get to eat? Okay, here's what you're gonna do. I had tracked 3 ounces, right? So now I'm gonna ask, you know who, what is 202.5% of 3, right? So let's do that. What is 202.5% of 3?
The answer is 6.075.
Bam. Okay. Now, the one last step, because I want to be precise. 3 is still in ounces. I need to convert to grams. So I'm going to say, how many grams is that many ounces? And that's going to be the actual weight of cooked pasta that I get to eat. Okay, so let's do that. So This is how many ounces. Now I just need to convert it to grams. How many grams is 6.075 ounces?
It's 172.22 grams.
Okay, so I'm going to write that number down as I go back over here to my scale. 172.22. So really, instead of me getting to eat 3 ounces of pasta cooked, I'm getting to eat a little over 6 ounces, which is like, yeah. So 3 ounces of pasta, and I'm going to show you the comparison here in a minute of this is that amount raw and this is that same amount of pasta cooked. You'll see it's a huge difference. So while this can be really frustrating, you need to make sure that you're doing this with any food that you're changing its state. Okay, so the final comparison on the pasta example. Okay, this is the pasta only. It's not including the weight of the bowl, right? But this is what 3 ounces of raw pasta looks like. Okay, there it is. Now, and again, to make sure that you're not weighing the bowl, we're gonna zero out, put the bowl on. I don't want that to count for my food, right? Because I'm not eating my bowl today. So zero it out. But now, remember, cooked pasta, that's really how many grams I get. So, so while 3 ounces may not sound like much, when you really use macros and you remember this information is for 2 ounces of raw pasta, now you see what you really get. And we're back. So this time we are going to do sort of looking at ratios from going the other direction. So now we're going to take some chicken that I've been marinating. We're going to measure it raw. We're going to cook it, and then we're going to measure it again. And that way you can see why we need to do this double weighing or double measuring to be truly accurate on macros. And remember, the whole problem here is that when you buy things that need to be cooked, the nutritional information that's on the package is the way that you bought it. So if you bought your meat or your chicken or your fish raw, any nutritional information that you're getting from your store is based on the way they sold it. Now, if you're buying something like lunch meat that's processed, that's already cooked for you, you don't have to do this. If you're buying something like berries or any of this other produce that you're going to be eating in the same state in which you bought it, then you don't have to worry about it, right? Because the condition of the mass is not going to be changing. But if essentially I'm cooking meat and it's going to be getting some of the liquid cooked off, right, and essentially shrinking, if I'm tracking how much I'm eating based on the raw, that's not right. And to be honest, if you're going to be tracking macros at all, you need to do it inaccurately, because otherwise it's almost just as bad as not tracking at all, because you're not really giving yourself accurate data. And the point of doing macros is that you have accurate data to where you can see where you're at a deficit or where you can do a bulk or a cut or whatever it is that you want to do. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you really quickly. This is the easiest marinade, by the way. This is raw, boneless, skinless chicken. I buy mine at Costco so that I can get, the price is really good. I can get 6 sets of 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts for just over $20. So that lasts me, I cut them up, I put them in the deep freezer, it lasts me for like a month. And this is honestly just Italian dressing, all that is. And this is the Olive Garden brand, just if you want a really cheap, easy marinade. I stab it a whole bunch of times with a fork, I put the marinade in, I shake it up really well, which is why this is a mess. And you can leave it in the fridge from just a couple of hours up into a couple of days. But just so you know, a 1 ingredient marinade, super easy. Now, that does mean that the numbers are gonna be off just a tiny bit, because while I'm gonna wipe off the dressing as much as I can, yes, technically it did absorb just a tiny bit of salad dressing. So this isn't going to be perfect, but you're going to get the idea. Of course, raw meat, we want to be putting it in something so that we're keeping ourselves from getting any kind of diseases. So what I'm going to do, this is going to be zeroed out with the dish, right? So that plastic dish that actually came with this scale, there you go. We don't want to be adding that into our calculations here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in, we're going to get these measurements, and we're going to start figuring out our ratios for the meat. All right, so here we are. This is my raw chicken. There's 2 boneless, skinless breasts, and we're sitting at 551 grams. So that's where we're at raw. And I'll remind you again to make sure that your scale is on a balanced surface so it's not wobbling. You just want to get rid of any extra factors that you can so that your data is accurate. So my raw chicken is at 551 grams. Now what I'm going to do is cook this, and you want a meat thermometer if you don't have one. This one is a magnetic one, to make sure that my chicken ends up with an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm not going to make you guys watch while I do that. So what I'm going to do is, we've got our raw measurements now. I'm going to cook this. When it's cooked, we're going to weigh it again, and then we're going to find our ratios with the help of Siri. Okay, here we are with two sort of beautifully cooked pieces of chicken. And so you can see the exact two pieces of chicken, now that they've been cooked, have gone from 551 grams to 444. So real quick, let me show you how you would calculate what the difference is. And again, I know it seems kind of ridiculous, like we're sitting here and, we're sitting here and like doing ratios and percentages and with dry erase boards and stuff in your kitchen. By the way, remember I've gotten these markers, the set of 3 markers and a dry erase board from Dollar Tree. So you can get this stuff for cheap. You can get the magnetic ones that stick on your fridge, but you know, this is a great way for you to just figure stuff out in the beginning. So, and I honestly am going to use pretty much the same ratio from raw to cooked. And let me show you what I mean. So we're going to ask you know who. What percentage of 551 is 444?
It's about 80.5807%.
Okay, so we're going to make it 80.6. Okay, so if I grab my marker again, 80.6, and I apologize, my handwriting is more terrible than normal. So basically what that means is when you're cooking boneless, skinless chicken, you're essentially ending up with only about 80% of what it was when it was raw. Okay, so you're losing 20% just from it, you know, losing fluid and being cooked and all of that stuff. So the exact same 2 pieces of chicken. So here's the problem. If I say, like, for dinner tonight, I'm going to track 6 ounces of chicken, I don't really get 6 ounces of chicken. It's only 80.6%, right? So now let's figure out exactly what I'm going to eat and how I'm going to measure what I'm going to eat tonight. So this last little part on measuring macros, so that I can figure out if I tracked in MyFitnessPal or Macros Plus or whatever app you use, if you said 6 ounces of chicken, you can't really go over here and measure 6 ounces of cooked chicken, right? Because I bought this raw. So the app is thinking I'm eating 6 ounces of raw chicken or the equivalent. So as you can see, it's not the same. So really what we're going to do is, watch, I'll do this real quick. So I had tracked 6 ounces of chicken for dinner tonight, okay? What is 80.6% of 6?
That would be 4.836.
That's really how many ounces I'm going to get. Now, because I want to be more accurate and I want to actually do grams and not ounces, we're going to round that. No, we'll leave it at 4.8. How many grams is 4.8 ounces?
The answer is 136.08 grams.
Okay, so instead of me getting to really eat 6 ounces worth of chicken, I'm really getting 4.8 ounces is what I get to eat and what I'm actually going to measure out for dinner tonight, even though I put in my tracker that I'm going to be eating 6 ounces. And the difference is on things like the first example I gave you with pasta, it's going to gain mass because it's absorbing water. Here, some of the fluid is getting cooked out, so you're losing some. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I know it's still a lot of a crash course. If you have questions, please drop them down here. Again, find the Macros Inc., INC, as in incorporated. You can find that group on Facebook. You can find them online. They have lots of free materials, a really, really good free ebook that you can get for signing up with them. But that is just a person with sort of moderate intelligence showing you how to find the ratios and having to do double measuring or double weighing of some stuff in your kitchen if you're tracking macros. So I'm Sarah. I'm the Real Simple Mama. I'm going to chop up this chicken and get ready for dinner. Thanks so much for watching.